Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie, Jessica. So, today we have quite the treat for you. Jessica is going to be schooling us in Omegaverse and Reverse Harem.
So welcome to Romance 101. It's gonna get wild.
Okay, so Jessica, are we starting with Reverse Harem and then going into Omegaverse or vice versa?
Yes, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button because guys, we give away free books here. So you really want to be a part of that. So yeah, we're gonna start with Reverse Harem and then go into Omegaverse. And part of the reason why we're doing that, and part of the reason why we grouped this together, is because a lot of Omegaverse are Reverse Harem stories. Not everyone. I have one that's not, but the majority of them. And there's a reason why, and we'll explain that. But Mandy's going to give us some definitions first, and we're going to talk about those.
Okay, so to start off with Reverse Harem, it's just as a harem is made up of one man with multiple women, a reverse harem consists of our female protagonist and 3 or more male love interests. However, this is not a situation where the woman has to pick her one true love. She can keep all of them. She does not have to choose.
Yes. So here's the deal with reverse harems. I get really confused, especially when there's more than like 3, 4, 5 guys. Like there's some people that look out for like 7 and 10 and these big numbers. I get really confused as to who's who, depending on the author. There's some authors that are able to really like, define who the guys are, and that makes it easier for me. But I'm pretty picky about my reverse harems because again, I get confused. And the other thing too is we had this discussion. If it's just 2 guys and 1 girl, that is a menage. That is not a reverse harem. It has to be 3 guys and the girl. So 4, basically 4 people in the relationship. So okay, so let's talk. I've got 5 recommendations for reverse harem, and then we'll move into Omegaverse. I had to think there for a second.
Okay.
I didn't really do these in any particular order. These are just some of my favorites and some that I think would be good to start with because they're really good about defining each individual person in the story. Okay. So my first one, Mandy, you've read this one. So you could stay on with me if you wanted for this one. Or just give it weird looks.
Sorry. I already had the click going. Okay. So when I tried to move the mouse, it just went ahead and clicked.
Mm-hmm. So the first book that I have is Second to the Right by T.S. Kinley. This is going to be one of my top reads of the year. I mean, it's going to be on my at least top 10, 15 list. I loved this story. So this is a Peter Pan reimagining, continuation. The girls, this T.S. Kinley is their sisters that wrote this book. And so they said it's a continuation. So this is about Gwen. And Gwen is a daughter of Wendy. She has been like Wendy was her, great grandmother or great. I don't know how far back it is. And Peter had always promised Wendy that he would bring her back for spring cleaning. And he used to go get, go to the real world and get a daughter of Wendy, her granddaughters, for many years. And then that kind of fell by the wayside. And he misses Wendy. He thinks about Wendy all the time. He's grown up. Some things have happened. So he and the Lost Boys have grown up. And he finally decides that he's tired of pining for Wendy. He's going back to get her, but he goes back and it's Gwen. And Gwen has just been assaulted by an ex-boyfriend at the club that night. And she's in her room and she's upset and she's drunk. And Peter Pan shows up in her window. Hot Peter Pan shows up in her window and he takes her kidnaps her, takes her to Neverland. The thing about Neverland is when you're there, you forget. And she's been taking care of her sister who is dying of cancer and their parents are gone and she starts to forget. And that's a big problem. You don't just have Peter in here. You have the 3 other Lost Boys and there might even be somebody else that shows up eventually. So loved this book so much. Mandy read it.
Yep.
I forced her to read it.
Yep.
You liked it. It was a lot, but you liked it.
Yes, I did.
Because Mandy's just not into the reverse harem thing. She doesn't understand getting to have your cake and eat it too.
Okay.
So, okay. So the next book that I have, The Vixen's Lead. This is another shiny one. Drives me nuts. By Tate James. This is the first book in the Kate Davenport series. Now, if you pick up anything by Tate James, I read Madison Kate. I've read all of her series. She writes reverse harem. She does it amazingly well. She's got very strong heroines. I absolutely love all of hers. Madison Kate was one of the first ones that I read that was reverse harem, but I actually like this one a little bit better. This is more paranormal and a little fantasy. But this is about Kit. So it's called the Kit Davenport series because it's about Kit. And she is this international thief known as the Fox. And she has these special abilities. And it leads her to, she just doesn't know who to trust. There's this big mystery going on. There's some magic. But it leads her to this group of guys. And they all have their own things going on. And it's really hard to explain what the book is about. But it is good. So if you like a little bit of fantasy or paranormal, it's more paranormal than fantasy. But if you like a little bit of paranormal, because they are all shifters and they're all different kinds of shifters, and a really strong heroine, this is the one that you should go with. This is very easy for your first reverse harem. So there's quite a few guys and maybe even a set of twins. So, but I can keep them all straight. So that is a positive. So the next book that I have is it's a duet. So this is The Pageant by Lilith Vincent. This is a duet. So it starts with The Pageant and the second one's The Crown. But this is about Lila or Lilia. I'm not sure if it's Lila or Lilia, but she is a model. And she is in a foreign country and she's doing this modeling gig. And she stands up for somebody at the show who's, getting harassed by the people that are running the show. And because she does that, she ends up getting kicked out. And so she's walking around on the streets, and I want to say it was like Rome or somewhere. She's walking around and she is, has just left this venue when she gets abducted. And then when she wakes up, she is in a cage in this dark room with, there's a total of 18 girls, including her. And these girls have been kidnapped and abducted by these Russian Bratva guys. And the head of the thing, he wants the winner. He's going to put these girls through a pageant. And they're all models. They're all models that have gone missing. And whoever wins the pageant, that's who he's keeping. So this is very captive. I'm keeping her. But this is a reverse harem because it's the head of the Bratva dudes and his two buddies. So there's 3 guys, 1 girl. This is dark, so definitely check triggers. There's some crazy things that happen in here, but this is really good. I do like Lilith Vincent. She does a really good job with her reverse harems.
That sounds crazy.
It is crazy.
This is why I don't care for reverse harem. I like the she's mine, don't touch her, don't look at her. She's mine.
They have that, but it has to be within their harem. If anybody from the outside touches her, they're in trouble. And I know it's not the same, but it is in this world. It is in their little world. So, yeah. Okay, so the next book is Paranormal. But this is Cute But Psycho by Beatrix Hollow. This is by Bree. This is about Bree. She is a little half vampire, and she is obsessed with her counselor, her psychologist, and he's a vampire. These things are not known in this world, right? Like, they don't know that regular humans don't realize that there's this supernatural stuff going on. And so she ends up she's stalking her psychologist, and she goes to his house one day just as he's unaliving a few people because he is a vampire. And he's a vampire serial killer. And I know it sounds absolutely nuts, but it is so good. So because he's the psychologist and this stuff happens, she gets put into Verfallen Asylum, which is an asylum for the supernatural, because he's got an agenda and there's a reason. So she gets put in there, and when she's in there, not only is he there and around and having a relationship with her, she meets a few other guys. One is a basilisk, which he's my favorite character because he brings the comedy to the whole thing. And you meet Nemo, who is a wolf shifter. He's absolutely huge. And this is their story. They're in an insane asylum. There's all these crazy things going on. It is so much fun, and it was so good. But you got a few guys and one girl. One of the guys can't even touch her. He's a basilisk. If he touches her, his skin it'll poison you. But they managed to make it work somehow. So then for my last one, we're going to go right back to Lilith Vincent, because she does it. She brings it. And so the last one I have, this is a trilogy. This is the First Comes Blood. This is her Promised in Blood series, or trilogy. There's 3 books, but this is the first one in it, and it's First Comes Blood. And this is about a young girl. I believe she's 16 when the book's, nope, 17. It's her 17th birthday. Her dad is, I believe, the mayor. And her name is Kiara. And it's her 17th birthday, and her dad is this influential guy in the city. And her mom is this meek little mouse. And she's told that she's going to have they're having a party for her 17th birthday. And there are 4 extra place settings at the table. And she doesn't understand why. It's normally just the 3 of them. And when she gets down for dinner, her dad's like, oh yeah, we have company. And it's these 4 guys who run the city. And they are all best friends. And they are all like crime related, mafia related in different ways. And she is told by the end of the night that she is going to have to choose one to be her husband on paper, but they inform her that all 4 of them will have her. Just one will be her legal husband, and she will have a year to marry them. On her 18th birthday, she will marry them. Her mom tells her she's going to get her out of this. She doesn't know how, but she's going to get her out of this. Dad is very abusive. Dad's a dick. And then all of a sudden, something happens to mom. And we're kind of left hanging, and it causes a rift in the boys. But, there's 3 books. And it is a reverse harem. So there you go. Very, very, very good. So that is what I have for reverse harem. Now, don't worry. Got plenty more reverse harems going on. They're just in the Omegaverse. So like I said before, the reason why we did a reverse harem before Omegaverse is because a lot of Omegaverse books are reverse harem, because they form a pack, they form a group. But Mandy, can you tell them what the definition is?
I would love to.
Thank you.
Okay, so Omegaverse is a subgenre of erotic fiction, and originally it was a subgenre of erotic / fan fiction. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Its premise is that a dominance hierarchy exists in humans, which are divided into dominant alphas, neutral betas, and submissive omegas.
Yes. That was the first place I read it, was in fan fiction. I read fan fiction before I got into reading, and that's the first place I read it. I was obsessed with it then too. But I loved it. So that's where that came from. And I remember thinking when I first read it, like, what the heck is this? So here's the deal with reverse harems. Or not reverse harems, Omegaverse. So Mandy's talking about the hierarchy. So you have your betas, who are you got 3 classifications. Typically, it's 3 classifications of humans. So your alphas are the top, highest in the hierarchy. And then you have betas, which are your everyday average Joes. They don't have any type of biological differences from you or I. And then you have the omegas, who are the bottom of the food chain, but that's who alphas want. That's who alphas procreate with. They're more submissive. They're smaller. They're typically smaller built in stature. They're typically the fertile ones. Instead of having periods, and in some books, it depends. For the omegas, instead of having periods, they have a heat cycle that can be like every month, or it can be every 3 months. It depends on the author and how they write it. And it's pretty rough when they have it. Some of them, they have periods on top, which that would be a real crappy way to live, let me tell you. But then you have your alphas, who are at the top of that food chain, and they they can go into a rut, just like an animal would go into a rut. And they in the majority of stories will have a knot. Just think of animals, think of wolves, think of dogs. So typically the betas can't take a knot.
Can you draw us a picture?
I am not drawing you a picture. Use your imagination.
I'm a visual learner.
I'll draw you a diagram after the video. But they typically have a knot. The Omegas crave the knot. The Omegas have to have the knot in order to get through their heat cycle. So it's a very, I don't even know what you would call it. Just very kind of primitive. It takes you back to your baser instincts, I guess. So, so I have five recommendations for you guys. This gets very interesting.
So are you going to start off for somebody who maybe is like, oh, Omegaverse is intimidating? Do you have like a start here type thing?
I do. I'm just trying to find where I marked it to. I don't know where it went. We're just going to talk about it. Yes. Okay. Yes, I have one that's a start here that's not as crazy. It's not as wild. And then we're going to get a little more wild. Okay. So the first one I have isn't even reverse harem. It's one-on-one. It's a one-on-one situation. It's a male and a female. And that is The Alpha Awakens by Anna Fury. Now, this book is way more centered on the plot than it is on the spice, but it is spicy. But this is set in the future. There has been an illness that has affected all of the men in the country. I'm assuming in the world. It's been like a year and a half since I read it, but I can't remember. But all the guys are affected. It gives them a high fever, and they start bleeding out of their orifices. And then the government, it must just be hanging out around the corner because they just rush in and grab the guys when this happens, and the families never see them again, and it only affects men. Well, you have our heroine. She is, I didn't write her name down, I forgot her name, but she is a reporter, and she is living with her best friend in an apartment in New York, or an apartment complex in New York. And she is she has to go to the grocery store one day. Now, that you can only travel in pairs, you only travel during the day, you avoid men like the plague, because the guys that the country hasn't captured, they're these crazy, they think of them as crazy wild beasts. They're just misunderstood at this point, but they're not. But the women, they don't know any different. So they're trying to stay away from these guys and not provoke them, because they could be roaming around out there, and they just don't know where they're going to be. So she's going to go to the grocery store. Her friend is a nurse, and they don't live together. They just live in the same apartment building. And they do this when they're at the store. The nurse gets a phone call that she has to go into work. And so our heroine starts to head back to her apartment. Just before she gets back to her apartment, she's attacked by one of these feral, crazy guys. And he has her cornered. He's snarling at her. He's rabid at this point. Like, he's got rabies, kind of rabid situation. And another guy comes up and kind of growls behind him. And this guy flees, and she's able to rush into her apartment. Well, that guy that saved her is Orion. And he was affected by this illness, and it has changed him. It's changed his DNA. He's bigger, he's bulkier, he has these other instincts. She knows nothing about what's going on. They just think that they've lost their minds. And he shows up at her apartment later that night, and he says to her, look, this is what's going on. There's a group of us guys that live on a compound up in upstate New York, and we want you to come and write an article on what happened to us, because you guys are not getting the full story. We're not crazy wild beasts. We just need a little help and need to get through this, and then we'll be good. And so she at first says no, but she's really attracted to him. There's some things going on there. And eventually he convinces her to go. And so she goes to the compound to stay for a week to write an article. And in that week, there's a lot of things that come out. So this starts a series, and it's a really good series by Anna Fury. But this is the best place to start, because you only have that one-on-one. And it might sound a little crazy, but it's just more like an illness that caused these weird things. It is Omegaverse, but that comes later in the book. So you get educated, and it's a soft start for this one. So there you have it. You can try this one, Mandy.
Well, I'm wondering why I didn't get that as an option when we did
You
Omegaverse.
did.
I did?
Yes, you did. I have recommended this a few times.
I think I picked I think not because I wanted like the full experience.
I think you did, which
It was
good
still
for
good.
you.
It's just not something I'm going to seek out.
So this next one is also another soft start. This one has the pack dynamic where you have the reverse harem, but it's not as crazy as Omegaverse can get. So this is another easy one. If you're cool with reverse harems and you're like, I want to dip my toes into this, here's your next suggestion. So a recommendation. So this is One Pucked Up Pack by Sarah Blue. This is a hockey reverse harem Omegaverse, or just hockey Omegaverse, because typically it's a given that it's a reverse harem. So this is about Charlie. She is our Omega, and she is home in Vermont over the holiday season, and she's lives with grandma, so she goes to school, but she's home for her school break with grandma. And she goes out to the lake one day, and it's all frozen over. She and her dog go for a walk. They end up out at the lake, and there's these guys off on the other side of the lake, and they're playing hockey with one of the local boys. And so she kind of does her own thing, when lo and behold, she gets hit in the boob with a hockey puck, and then she falls and hits her head, and which knocks her out. And when she comes to, there's these three guys hovering over her, and they're all alphas, and she knows she's an Omega, but they're all alphas. They're all very protective over her, and they decide to take her back to their cabin because she's been hit pretty hard, in the head, and then she's got the boob hit. So they take her back to her cabin. When they get her there to try and get her to warm up and make sure she's okay, one of them realizes that this is our fated mate. Like, this is our mate, or at least my mate. And these guys have already formed their own pack. Which happens quite often, where the guys are already being an established, pack, so an established group within a relationship, even though there might not be sword crossing, there might not be, relationships, or might not be an situation in the book, because sometimes you find that does happen with Omegaverse, where you'll have two of the guys in the harem who will already have a relationship, or they decide to start a relationship, so the sex isn't always straight up guy and girl, and that's totally fine. So I can't remember if that happens in here. I think these guys are all just really close buddies, and they love each other as brothers, but they're all about to go into the NHL. They're all about to go into the draft to be selected by teams to be a part of the NHL. And so they realize she's their fated mate for all three of these guys. And then they have to separate at the end of this season, or at the end of this holiday season. They have to go their separate ways, because these guys are about to go, and they're going to be in all different areas of the country, and they have these plans. So this book is more about, like, how do they make their relationship work? As an Omega, she needs to have one of her alphas around all the time, and when the other ones aren't there, she is pining for them big time. But these guys are literally everywhere, and she's still in college. So how do you make that work? So I love the relationship dynamic in this book. I love how they make them work out. It's really good. It's a really good read. Plus, it's a little Christmassy.
Oh, so, well, there you go.
There you go. There's your Christmas ones. Okay. So then.
That's how you get your holiday reads in, isn't it?
That's how I get my, yeah. Find me the interesting things. Just put a little snow in it, and I'll call it holiday. Like my Ice Planet Barbarians. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the next one is also a littler. It's a little more on the, I don't remember it being too crazy. So this one's kind of in between. So this one is called Safe Haven, and it's by Jerica James. So this is about Briar. She is an Omega, and she is pregnant. Now you do need to check trigger warnings. She is assaulted, and that is how she becomes pregnant. This happens at work, and the person who did it there's no consequences for them. And instead she starts to get shunned, because again, in this world, they're the lowest on the totem pole. And so there's a lot of regulations. It's very like, take you back a few centuries to how you treated women back then kind of a situation. And just remember, guys, it's fiction, and it's fiction. I just compartmentalize that. Don't always like it, but I have to compartmentalize that. But her brother finds out what's going on with her, and her family's not, they're not for the situation. She wants her baby, even if the circumstances around conceiving the baby suck. So she decides she's going to keep the baby. Her brother calls a friend for help. And he has his own pack because nobody will want her. Nobody wants the baby because you want an unbonded pregnant Omega. It just doesn't, it's just not a good thing in this world. And so this pack decides to let her stay until they can figure out what to do with her. So they let her stay while she's pregnant to have the baby. And they don't necessarily say they're going to keep her right off the bat. But things happen because, you know, they happen. It's been a few years since I read this one, but this one still sticks with me. I probably want to go do a reread of this one. So this is a good one too. I just miss you.
I'm taking notes like a good student. I've written all the books that I want to read that you've talked about on this Post-it note.
The next one I have, and we're getting a little more into it now, is called Hypnotize. This is by E.J. Lawson. I just read this one a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. I really liked this one. So this is about our heroine, who is obviously an Omega, and she's been to this Omega Academy, and it's where all the Omegas have to go. And they get schooled on how to be an Omega and how to be submissive and how to be, you know, how to be barefoot and pregnant, basically, is what they're taught there, and be prim and proper about it. And when she was there, her family found a pack for her that she has never met. And so she is traveling to Alaska to meet this pack, who will be her pack. She'll be their Omega. She has to stay pure for them. There's all these crazy archaic rules that she has to follow. And she has never met these guys. They're very influential. They're very powerful. And that's all she knows about these guys. So she flies to Anchorage with her dads. Her mom has died and she's got two dads because one's her father and one's the other one, the pack, because again, it was a pack situation. And they take her to this littler airport outside of Anchorage. It happens all the time. So that's how we get around in Alaska. But they put her on a smaller plane, which is actually a private jet that's going to fly her to where her pack lives. But along the way, the plane crashes in the mountains in interior Alaska. And she is then found by this very grumpy dick of a guy. And he takes her back to his place where it's him and his two buddies who are a part of their own pack. And she doesn't have her heat suppressants to keep her from going into heat, which is a thing in Omegaverse. And she starts to go into heat because she can't get her things. We find out her pack that she was going to might not be the greatest people. And these guys want to keep her that have found her. They're snowed in. It's a blizzard. I promise there is more plot than what it sounds like, but it is really good. I actually read, this is the second in a 3-book series. They're just a standalone series, you know, are interconnected, because it all happens in this world. And I just read another one this week, and I'm really loving these. So definitely one to check out. And then I know you're so excited, aren't you?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
I know you are so much.
This is good though, because we know there's a lot of people who do really enjoy this.
Yes. Okay. And so then for my last one, this is one of my favorite Omegaverses, like absolute favorite Omegaverse books by one of my absolute favorite authors.
Okay, so this has got to be Grace McGinty coming up.
Yes, it is Grace McGinty coming up. It is. Yeah.
Okay, but is it, I'm just trying to think if this is reverse harem or if it's Omegaverse. Pay-per-view?
No, because a pay-per-view isn't Omegaverse.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I wasn't sure because I haven't read it, but I know you love that one.
Mm-hmm. So Grace McGinty, if you guys are just wanting to get into reverse harems, she is another one that writes amazing reverse harems. Everybody's well defined. She is one of my favorite authors for reverse harem. She is a one-click author for me every single time. So I'm just going to put that out there that if you're new to reverse harem, she does it really, really, really well. And
Grace McGinty is the reason we have 1 minute book recs.
She is, because I talked about Sticks and Stone, which is her hockey reverse harem.
For a
way
good
too
10
long.
minutes.
I did. So then we had to implement the 1 minute book recs, but okay. So this is her Omegaverse. This is Trist in the Dark. She has a couple different Omegaverses. One is a shifter Omegaverse, but this is a straight up people no shifting Omegaverse, because you do find that in shifters quite often if you get into shifter romance. But this again is Trist in the Dark. This is about Trist, who is our heroine, and this is set in the future in the United States. And we've had a few wars, and there was some nuclear stuff that happened, which changed the DNA of people, unfortunately, or fortunately, no matter depending on how you look at that. And so we have so betas, the people in between, they're just not producing babies, and if they are, they're only having boys. And then you have your alphas, and then you have your omegas, and alphas can only procreate with omegas. And so the omegas are the only ones who are having girls, and they're the only ones who are really fertile. And so when you turn 16-ish and you present as an omega, you go to school, the government comes and collects you and put you into these schools and into these places where you're protected and you're kept safe. At least that's what they tell them they're there for. And then when you turn 21, you are submitted to a nationwide lottery. And this group of people that run the Omegas groups and stuff, they run this lottery. And so I think it was once a week, a guy is announced. It's he's drawn from his social security number, and he could be like a straight up beta, or he could be omega, no, not omega, or alpha. And so there is no discrimination in the lottery. You get who you get, unless they're already married. And so that's what happens here. She goes, she's reluctant. She's a very strong heroine. She's reluctant. She doesn't want to be a part of this, but they're forcing her to do it. And they start drawing guys, and they draw until they're done. So she doesn't get a say on how many guys that are in her harem or in her group, in her pack. The government does. And so when she pisses off the wrong person in the government, they continue to draw. And so there's a lot that happens in this book. This story is one of my absolute all-time favorite Omegaverse stories. I love it so much. She gets the grumpy guy. She gets the billionaire asshole. She gets the sweet, cinnamon roll guy. And there's other things that happen in here, because what happens when they're already connected to somebody else? What happens when one of her guys has someone at home? So that's what you got to ask yourself. So I love this book so much. What?
How does that work in this little situation?
It does. There are some sneaky things that happen. They might bring someone in. I can't give it away.
Hey, this is where all this stuff bugs me. It's too love triangle-y.
Oh, when I'm telling you he's in a relationship, it might not be with another woman.
Oh, okay.
There we go. It's clicking. So don't let that stop you from reading. Don't let it stop you, because I guarantee it works out, and it's good. It's so good. So that is what we have for Reverse Harem and Omegaverse to get you started in Reverse Harem and Omegaverse. I've been waiting for this video. A lot of you guys had said that you were intimidated by Omegaverse. So I have given you my favorites. I've given you the easy ones to get into. So go read some Omegaverse.
That's your homework.
Yes.
Okay. So make sure to leave us a comment. How do you feel about Reverse Harem and Omegaverse? Like, obviously, Jessica and I are on very different sides of the fence here. So how do you feel about it? Let us know. Obviously, it's totally okay if you love it, or if you hate it, or if you've never even tried it. Just let us know where you're at with those in the comments below, and make sure you check back on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for new videos from us, and on Wednesdays through the end of the year for Romance 101 School.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Class is dismissed. We'll see you in the next video.